you'd mentioned Gulab Singh's basically up to no good in the background. Could you just expand a little bit on that?
Well, we've gone quite deep into this quite quickly then. So, so some of this stuff was first uncovered by Baba Satinder Singh's book on the Jammu Fox or something like that, I think the title was. And it's quite an old book, but I was able to take it a little bit further with the stuff that I uncovered with my earlier research. Essentially, for those that are listening that might not know who these people were that we're talking about, you have Maharaja Ranjit Singh's family, who were the ruling dynasty of Punjab from the late 18th century onwards up until 1849. But then, you know, amongst Punjabi elites, there were various Sikh, Muslim, Hindu, various different noble families that were new or were recently promoted, as well as European generals and all sorts of people. Foremost among them that had risen rapidly through the ranks under Ranjit Singh's rulership were the Dogra clan. And there were three brothers, Raja Dhyan Singh, Sujit Singh, Gulab Singh. And Dhyan Singh was essentially Maharaja Ranjit Singh's prime minister or vakil through much of his reign. All three brothers were incredibly smart, incredibly charming, you know, and very good at their military activity as well. And that was how, really, through the military side of things, that they'd risen through the ranks. They hailed from the sort of Jammu Kashmir part of this kingdom, which was taken over by Ranjit Singh in the course of his reign. And they came really from quite humble origins and rapidly got through. And they were very ambitious. And the kind of relationship between their family and the ruling family is deeply controversial, in that there's lots of kind of, question marks, shall we say, within the history about whether Dhyan Singh in particular really wanted to take over from Maharaja Ranjit Singh's family after the Maharaja died in 1839, and that potentially he was gunning for his own son, Raja Hira Singh, who was definitely a favourite of Maharaja Ranjit Singh's, to become in the future a Maharaja, or essentially the most powerful guy at Lahore. And this didn't come to pass. In all of the power struggles that take place in Lahore in the 1840s after Ranjit Singh's death, Dhyan Singh is killed, Shuddit Singh is killed, Hira Singh is killed, all in the power struggles that take place. Gulab Singh's son is also killed, and he is the last one standing of that family. And he is an incredibly bitter, angry man at that point, but still very power hungry. So the family's kind of attempt to control Lahore fails miserably. But what he takes away as a consolation prize, in a way, is my understanding anyway, is that he wants to take control of Jammu and Kashmir and make it his own state, right? Cut his losses from Lahore. And it's that he maneuvers to do in the 1840s, in the middle of the 1840s. He tries to stay away as much as possible from Rani Jindan's government's control, the army's control. And what I found in the British Library was, although he was expected to be a courtier, a minister of the Lahore Darbar, and as well as a general of the broader Khalsa army, he really starts to chart an independent policy by sort of 1843 to 45. And Sikh troops are deployed multiple times to try and rein him in, to make him pay his taxes on time, and he doesn't want to do it, right? But he does this whole show of coming and maafi munging and, you know, with hands folded, sorry, I've made a mistake, a bit like Boris Johnson, to be quite honest. I didn't know what I was doing. And then he pays them off, he bribes off the soldiers and sends them back. There's a whole bribery and corruption thing that goes on. And this is all documented in the secret enclosures to British government letters that move back and forth from Shimla, Delhi, Punjab, and then back to London. So the main letters have one story, but the intelligence files that were sent as enclosures with the letters tell a different story in much more detail. And it's when you read these things side by side that you really see how these historical narratives over time leave things out or gloss things over or overemphasize certain things, right? So what we see manifested in a lot of the public records is this idea that Rani Jindan was the one who instigated the war in 1845, the First Anglo-Sikh War, to seek revenge for the murder of her brother, Jawahar Singh, by the Khalsa troops. It's kind of rubbish, to be quite honest, because if you look at the primary sources for that period and you look at the range of them, if you look at the letters, for example, that were published in the Punjab Blue Books, which were the kind of official government record or narrative including letters and memos, that was published in Parliament immediately after the First Anglo-Sikh War to justify and explain what had happened. In those letters, you will see the Governor General, Henry Harding, saying that the Maharani has, done this, that she's angry and she's willing to chuck the troops across the river in a kind of do or die mission. If they die, she'll be happy because she's got a badla. But if they win, then great, they can loot British territories and give her some space and then bring back that bounty, essentially. But what he misses out is the private letters that he wrote to Raja Gulab Singh and back and forth, right? Where Raja Gulab Singh is also bribing other government ministers and soldiers to put the Maharani in a corner, essentially. That she has no control over the army. He's posing as a loyal minister to her, but underhandedly bribing her soldiers and cutting a deal with Harding to say, if a war happens, this is how the troops are going to move, this is how things are going to go down, these are the weak spots to fight with in different battles, and if you reward me at the end, then the reward I want is Jammu and Kashmir, essentially. It's all written. Maharani had no clue this was going on, right? No clue whatsoever. And the crux of the matter is there's even courtly records, one of her courtiers at the time, Governor Judhia Prasad, as well as British intelligence files that show that actually she didn't want a war. She wanted to calm things down. And she was she was angry and she was grieving and upset that her brother had been killed stone cold in front of her. But she recognized that things had gone too far under him and that she needed to dial things down, right? But the situation had got way too dangerous. And it gets to a point where she actually goes with the little Dalip Singh to Gobindgarh Fort to take money out of the treasury there and bring it back to pay the soldiers so that they are not banging on her doorstep to kill her too. And there's all this messes up, basically.